Welcome to Risky Thoughts with Rob and Roy.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Roy.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Risky Thoughts. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Tonight, we thought we would explore something that Roy and I share in common, and I think a lot of our listeners do as well.
Yeah.
And that's about being a Canadian.
Yeah.
And so,
I also, just before I cut you off already, I do want to thank some people for writing in. Really great feedback. Love it. I like that we're building a base here. Trying to build a little small community, trying to get everybody in line, strengthening the individual, by having conversations like this. So,
yeah. We're very surprised, actually. We're finding that we're getting, obviously most of our listener base at this point in time is Canadian,
Yep.
which is a part of the reason why we're doing this as a tribute to our listeners. But also we are getting listeners from like the weirdest parts of the world. It's very interesting that we have people listening across all of Europe, a lot of people from the United States as well. We have Hong Kong, Turkey, just places I never thought we would ever reach. So very excited about that. And
the internet is like kind of like it's a large Canada. Like that's essentially what I want to say right now. It's just like, I love Canada. I am a Canadian. I am proud to be Canadian, and
Same.
that's what I think we're going to talk about here today. Like we have those vibes, where we have a mashing of cultures, and the internet is actually like essentially the same thing. The fact that like people across the globe are listening to two Canadian dudes talking about shit, it's amazing. And I just want to kind of get it out there because I love fucking Canada. When I was growing up, it was like a sin to love your own country. Like I love my boring town Markham. I love fucking just how people are having to integrate together. A person like me who's so like kind of socially active, right? I learned a lot about Chinese people, the different types of Chinese people. There's people who speak Cantonese and Mandarin, and there's a vibe between them. I don't know. I just, that's what I get. Even in my own community of being a South Asian, I am definitely like a very fringe South Asian. Like I am from a place called, my parents are from a place called Goa, and it's in India, right? And and we're Christians, right? And we're hyper marginalized. Like we are just like, fuck Christians, fuck Muslims. That's literally like the sentiment of India right now. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a dangerous thing for me to even say, right? But that's the reality. That's what we're seeing, right? I want to be honest, have a real conversation. But, that's me. You know what I mean? Like, I am this person. And when I came here, I met like people from Sri Lanka, Sinhalese people, Tamil people, other parts of India, people from Pakistan, right? And like, now, unfortunately, I was never like accepted into any of these cultures because I don't have those cultural norms, right? So I couldn't really identify with them. So I kind of identified.
You mean that you're like more Canadian than they are?
I'm more like Canadian, yeah. And like one comment I got when I was a kid was like, I grew up in Markham, and there was like Jamaicans and Tamil people, and some white people, some Italian people. You know what I mean? And I always got it from both people, from white people, brown people, black. Roy, you're so whitewashed. Like, and that actually pissed me off because it's like, you guys are listening to your like hip hop and reggae and like all that stuff, and at the end of the day, like if you actually look at the statistics, the most people who listen to hip hop are actually Caucasian males and females, I guess, too. But the reality is like, so like, you're calling me whitewashed, and it's just,
but you're listening to the stuff that more white people listen to than I listen to.
Exactly. So anyways, that's just kids, like when you're in high school, these are the things that you guys are kind of like, because we're all trying to figure out like who this guy is, who we are, and what group do you kind of fit in here. See,
that's very different than from my upbringing.
Yeah.
And we'll actually get to the point about talking about what it means to be Canadian in a second.
Yeah.
But this is kind of part and parcel of it, right? So the big difference for me is where I grew up. I grew up in a very predominantly Italian community. And, my school was filled with one culture, Italian. Mm-hmm. There were very, very, very few people. Probably I can count on one hand how many non-Italians were in my high school and elementary school.
Wow.
I actually, there was only one person I can think of in my elementary school, and there might have been 5 people I can think of that were in my high school that were not Italians.
Okay.
And by Italians, I mean, for like, Canadians,
Yeah.
but coming from Italian descent.
Yeah.
Either parents or grandparents descended from Italy,
Yeah.
immigrated to the country, whatever. So hearing what you just had to say about like not assimilating with this group or with that group is actually pretty funny, because here, if you went to high school where I come from, which is Woodbridge, there was no like other groups. It was just all Italians.
There was only Italians,
right? Like that's all there was. So there was no like not fitting in with your culture. Everybody had that in common.
Yeah.
We just found different ways to like separate ourselves, right? You know, and every high school has that, like the cool kids and the kids that were the book kids and like the book smart kids, and you know, but we didn't have cultural groups. You know what I mean? It was funny. It didn't exist that way.
But you still had groups, and that's one thing.
We did, of course. I think everybody does.
Pin, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but okay. Anyway, that being said, I just thought that was very interesting that you would say that, because I can't until I got to university. Anyways, there was no way I'd be able to understand what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because when I got to university, we took engineering. I was the minority, right? Like like white kids in engineering was like a rarity.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
UFT.
And everyone was like, "Oh, it's the white kid." And like if you were a really intelligent white kid, people thought like, "Oh, there's the really smart white kid," right? Like that was a rarity, right?
Yeah.
If you were Asian, everyone was just like automatic, like, "Oh yeah, smart."
Yeah.
You know, Indian, oh yeah, smart. Like especially because you're in engineering. But the white kid, like, you know, oh yeah, he's not so smart. You would never go to the white kid for help. But if he was really smart, he would like blow your mind, because like, oh my god, he's white and he's this smart. You know, it's anyways.
Those are the things that we kind of felt. You know what I mean? And like that's just I felt that too.
Yeah,
You know
this
what I
is not about racism or like, you know, anything to do with cultural opinions. This is just the reality of my experience, right? And I thought it was hilarious going into university and like just being the minority. I came from being a place where, like I said, there was no other cultures. It was all white people.
Yeah.
You know, and it was going to university was the best experience of my life, just for the record. Meeting all these cultures was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, like I never would have met you otherwise.
Oh, 100%.
You know, had I gone down a different route where I didn't go into the academic world and go into university, and I started working construction, which is obviously very typical and is a very stereotypical thing for Italians to do in North America.
Yeah.
I probably never would have really come across you, Roy. I never would have, because I mean, most of the companies that work out of my area hire who's around here. Like geographically, it's more convenient for
proximity.
them to hire. Yeah, exactly.
Course, yeah.
So it's all again, it's Italians, Portuguese, you know, some Polish, this and that. But for the most part, you know, there was I definitely would have been deprived of the experience of being, you know, exposed to the other cultures.
Wow, that's so interesting that you know what an opportunity. Like, and you know, I remember you at university, you're always like listening to Syrians and Pakistanis, and there was a couple of town people and Persians, and they're telling their stories, and you know, I just remember you were always like intaking, like, wow, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was different, man.
It's sick, man. Emerging of cultures is fucking amazing. It's violent, it's chaotic, you know, I'm going to use the word, it's kind of sexy. Like, you know what I mean? It is a seductive idea, but I don't know why, like, you know, today we're kind of like not, you know, we're kind of like, whoa, all these people are coming in, and maybe we were younger. That's why we were so open to it. And I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Well, I think it's actually a great opportunity to segue into the question of what does it mean to be Canadian.
Yeah.
Now, this may not necessarily be true across Canada, because obviously Canada's a big place, so there's different cultures all over the place. Now, we happen to live near Toronto. We're in the GTA, the Greater Toronto area.
In the 6, technically 416. So,
yes, we are in the 6. Yeah. I'm actually 905 and technically sort you, but our cell phones are 416.
Listen, God damn it.
No, but we're part of the Greater Toronto area, which makes us part of the 6, as you would call it.
Wait, is it 416 or is it 647? Why did Drake kind of? Which I know he went on one.
I thought it was something to do with like the 6 boroughs of Toronto. It had nothing to do with 416.
I thought it was the fucking 416.
No. I think everyone from Toronto thinks that, but no, I think it's actually the 6 boroughs of Toronto. Like you had Scarborough, North York, or Etobicoke. I actually don't know what they all are, sadly.
Yeah. I went to school with a guy, Mark Hamilton. I think I can use his name. You know, he's in Drake's crew. And actually, like, not to really brag, but one of my best friends, Rami, right? Like his name is Rami Kume. He does videos and stuff, and he filmed, what was it called? What was it? It was a video for Drake. It didn't pop, so like, you know, it didn't go really anywhere. But he filmed a video for, I think it's like 4 a.m. in Toronto.
Sure.
Or whatever. Anyways, yeah, but I don't know why we're talking about Drake. Fuck Drake.
Well, he is Canadian, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to get back to the question of what does it mean to be Canadian, and the reason I started talking about geography again is because obviously Toronto is the spot in the world, I think, that has, is notorious for its melting pot sort of
man.
Culture, right? There's a ton of cultures in Toronto, predominantly because Toronto is the busiest economically for Canada.
Right.
So most people who immigrate to the country will find their way to Toronto.
Yeah.
Or British Columbia, or Montreal. I guess those are the three biggest cities.
Yeah.
But Toronto being the biggest by a long mile. So this is a different Canada than you would find in like Regina, right? Or
course,
Saskatchewan,
or Newfoundland, or
right. Very different
BC.
Different type of Canadians.
Yeah.
But when I think of Canadians, I think of the East Coasters. Actually, I do think of the Newfoundlanders.
Really?
Yeah, because there's something about when people think Canadians, they're like, oh, you guys are always so nice.
Yeah.
You're so friendly. That, I think, comes from the Newfoundland culture. Like, that's not a Toronto thing.
Right.
Toronto's a major city.
Yeah.
So maybe by comparison to, like, New York, we're nicer people. But it's still an urban center where people are in the hustle and bustle. And so,
you got those natural kind of hustle and bustle vibes, let's
Exactly.
go, let's make cash,
Exactly.
We'll walk right over you.
But like small towns in Canada, however,
Yeah.
That's where you have that stereotypical Canadian.
Yes.
Like if I think Canadian, that's what I think of when I think of a Canadian.
Right.
I don't think of somebody from Toronto as a Canadian, although yes, of course, we are Canadians.
Yeah.
But this kind of jumps back to what we just ended with a moment ago, which is this idea of all these different cultures sort of surrounding us and all kind of trying to assimilate to become one culture. Mm-hmm. Now, what I would say is that I don't think that anybody in Toronto is trying to assimilate to the cultures of the small town Canada.
Yeah.
I think it's its own animal. Like the culture in Toronto is different than the rest of Canada.
I think I agree, but I do think that parts of that culture has definitely penetrated into the immigrant population, like such as myself. Like that niceness, if I'm online and I'm talking, like instantly people like, you're from Canada, right? And look, or you're Canadian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we say A. Like I'll say that all the time.
Yeah.
Like you're 100% Canadian and you're so nice and all this. It's just okay. Well, it's because I'm a nice person. Well, the fact that other people in different parts of the planet, just from my speech, my diction, the words I use, are able to detect that I'm Canadian, it means something.
Of course.
And like just as an aside, like the language you use is you,
Forms
right?
your identity.
And
Yeah,
it
part of
forms
it
your
anyways.
identity, it forms your like psychology, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's the mechanism that you use to basically take what's inside of your head and you put it onto the world. You do it through
absolutely.
language.
Yeah.
So for sure, I went to I was in Italy with my wife for my honeymoon, obviously a few years ago now. But one thing that is very true across the world, and I don't mean to bash Americans by saying this, but like there's something about America that people don't like.
Yeah.
So when you go to Italy, and I've also been to other places of Europe feeling the same sort of like the same feeling is that like, oh, you're American. Oh, but then you say, no, I'm from Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, you're from Canada.
Okay.
You're not from the USA. Okay. Yeah. Let me help. So we went to a laundromat, okay?
Right.
And my wife and I walked into the laundromat. I was wearing a Blue Jays hat, okay?
Yeah.
But at first they didn't think to like look at the icon on my hat or the symbol on my hat. They didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
So we first started like, here's our laundry. Can we please do our laundry? Now, this was the people that worked at this facility spoke mostly Italian. They had very, very poor English. Mm-hmm. So right away, when people don't speak the same language as you, there's a little bit of friction there. They kind of like, it's frustrating.
It's frustrating. Right? So yeah.
Yeah. So
that's your first impression.
100%. So there's like a negative feeling right out of the gates. Now I can get by with my Italian, but I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I was just speaking to them in English. And at some point they're just like, oh, I heard them because I can understand Italian, right?
Right.
And I can hear the husband talk to his wife because it was a couple with their kids working at this place. And I heard the husband talking to his wife like, oh, these damn Americans, like,
yeah.
they don't know. And I was like, no, hold on. Like, and that's when I kind of told him, like, look, I speak Italian,
Yeah.
and let me clarify something. I understand why you say that, but I'm not American. I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh yeah, Toronto Blue Jays, and then he saw the hat, right?
Yeah.
He goes, oh, let me help you. And then I told him I was from Italy, like my family's actually from Italy, and then all of a sudden, completely different, response in terms of the way we got along and the way our dialogue went.
Right.
It was like a much more like, friendly conversation after that.
Yeah.
But you hear this all the time. It's not uncommon. People across the globe for some reason have a negative attitude towards Americans.
Yeah.
And it's very different than when they think about Canadians. And, it's odd because we share the same culture, really,
Right.
as Americans. For the most part, it is different
Yeah.
in its ways. So let's explore that for a second. Like, what do you think makes Americans different from Canadians?
Well, you can see it in the politics, like right off the bat, like our politics is less like the difference between the left and right here are not as big. You know what I mean? And we are progressive, and we are definitely a left leaning culture by the Americans. That we're further left than the American left. We're open to ideas such as like, let's try to fix global warming. Like that's Trudeau's point. And
we have socialized healthcare.
we have exactly. we have like access to healthcare. That's a huge one. That's like all kind of. We're trying to get to that egalitarian. We're trying. I think that's one huge point, and we legalize marijuana. Like that's another big one that we're. Canada is definitely trying very left-leaning ideas. We're open, in some ways we're not. Yeah,
we're an open culture.
We're an open culture, and that there's this kind of idea of like a hierarchy, and Jordan Peterson explains it like. You look at your workplace, you'll notice that your boss, and you guys can try this, right? And really try to be mindful, try to be open to this idea. It's just like there's a leader, and his values will disseminate down to the hierarchies. So you'll notice if the leader is kind of like a showboat, kind of like a liar, right? You'll notice that lying is acceptable. Let's pretend that we're doing the job here when corporate comes over and things like that, right? So once again, that openness like transcends down to like it's people right down to me and you, right? And down to I can tell you that when I'm talking to other Canadians, we're always open. When I'm, let's just say, playing video games online, if I meet someone from Montreal, there's natural synergy, and we're just crushing it. You know what I mean? But when you have a kind of arrogance and stuff like that, and I'm not saying Americans are all arrogant, I'm just trying to elaborate on an idea of like this idea of like a hierarchy, like the king's values, right? The queen's values that are disseminated down to the people.
Well, I would hope that that's the case, right? Because we do live in a democracy.
Yeah.
Right. So like the leaders are selected by the people. Now that is also true, obviously, in the States and many other countries around the world. But I think you're right. And I mean, this is sort of a chicken and egg question. I don't know where it comes from first. Like, we just always nicer from the beginning, or I don't know. We're always more open from the beginning. I don't know. But there's no questioning that I think it has something to do with the cold. Weird. It's a weird. It's possible.
I don't know. That's just my like theory here. I have like, this is just like a theory. We all have ideas. It's just like, if you notice all the Scandinavian countries, okay, well, Russia, I don't know exactly, but then again, we know quite a handful of Russians, and they're actually quite open to ideas. They're intelligent and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, like, we have a hard life here in Canada because we have cold. We have to stay at home for periods of years, and we have to deal with ourselves.
Yeah, perhaps that's,
what I mean?
Something, yeah.
So like that, working on ourselves type of deals, going for our country is like so spread out in terms of its geography that, if you wanted to go to Saskatchewan, it's such a long ride where you're by yourself, and you kind of have to like really, you have nothing else to do but work on yourself at times. And that's just my opinion. And I hope that kind of gives you like a little bit of national pride in just being a Canadian. But this is one of the things
I'll say about Canada compared to the States, is that I think the States is far more patriotic than the Canadians are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Canadians aren't proud to be Canadians, because I think most Canadians are proud to be Canadians.
Right.
But Americans are like really like super patriotic. Right? Like very, very patriotic. Right. And I don't know if it's because you said earlier that we're far more left in general than the States is.
Yeah.
I don't think that our left is more left than the United States left. politically speaking.
Right.
I actually don't think that at all. I think that the States has a far more extreme version of both. I think there's far more disparity between the right and the left, but they both, like the far left and the far right in the United States, is farther right and farther left
right.
than
So
the
that
Canadians.
the difference between that, like on that spectrum, that difference between, it's polarized.
Yes, and we're less polarized here.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that makes me proud to be part of this country, is that usually speaking, like obviously the further apart you get from your left and right wing, assuming that 50% of the population falls on both sides, it means that there's a huge difference in opinion between half your culture. Like half your country thinks one way, half your culture thinks the other way. In Canada, I think we're all of us are very close to the middle.
Yeah.
And that's good because it means that you're right. When you speak to someone from Montreal or you speak to someone from British Columbia or Saskatchewan or any of our provinces,
instant synergy.
You automatically get along with them.
Yeah.
And it's because you don't have huge disparity between your values.
Yeah.
They're very similar.
Yeah.
Right? Which is an excellent thing, I think, for a country in general.
Yeah.
I mean, other parts of Canadian culture that I really appreciate is, and we could start sort of going down this path a little bit more here because I did want to focus a little bit on this. We definitely have far more openness to other cultures, right? When you and I think it is part of this idea of being less patriotic than the United States is, like because Americans are so patriotic about their culture and about America,
right?
When another culture comes in, it's like no, you can't change America because I love America.
Yeah, we're the leaders.
Yes, and exactly. We you can't. Don't come here and fuck with what we got because it's amazing. It's America.
Right.
Whereas in Canada, we're just like, we're all kind of like level-headed and sort of in that middle spectrum.
Yeah.
So when another culture comes in, it's just like, okay, bring your culture. Let's talk about it. Let's sort of mix it up. And, there's just something about that openness that comes with the idea of us not being so far left and right on a political spectrum, right?
Yeah, just another kind of point on what you were talking about there when people kind of come in. And like, there's dissenters. You definitely get this comment where it's just like, hey, listen, like, you're a fascist. And it's actually a very lazy thing to do. And at the end of the day, like, because what happened in like Nazi Germany is that this is essentially what Hitler did. In my opinion, and through my own analysis and just the way I see the world, it's just like he tried to protect a certain group of people, right? He tried to protect, and there's this comment that this guy named Zizek, I forgot his last name, but he's definitely a very Marxist. And like, listen, I'm open to all ideas, and I'm always looking to be wrong. So if I'm super right, sometimes I'm always looking to be like super left. And what he said is that like Hitler wasn't violent enough, right? So now I that's a very dangerous comment. It's very provocative. It got him, shot him to like famed him. But what he goes to explain is just that like he was violent with the people. But there's this idea that I was telling you about, this kind of seductive idea of like merging cultures together. It's a very violent process, and that's what he didn't want to do. So he was just trying to maintain like the status quo and like and that's when people throw out the word fascist, but you have to be careful when you throw out those terms, right? And you don't want to be lazy. You want to know where it's coming from. It's this idea to protect a certain ideology, whatever you want to call it, right? And that's, we're open to the change, right? And being open to change, like the world is continuously changing. There's a lot of really dangerous things coming. Like, we've got ecology problems, right? Like our ecosystems are dying, right? Now we have AI come in, right? So we're going to have also like genomic projects happening where we can change our DNA and maybe we can ultimately always feel happy. You know what I mean? So like, do we just resist these things as a culture? No, we want to be open to them because now is the time to be open. Mm-hmm. Kathy Woods, I don't know if I mentioned her, woman hero. Movie should be made about her because she was open to these ideas that we cannot stop change, and we want to be open to some degree. We don't want to be too open so that like, okay, let's just change everyone's genomes so that we can resist COVID. That's dangerous. But I'm just saying being open, right? Yeah. So, but it starts with the culture right at the bottom the ground floor. To be open means to, an easy task is let's accept somebody else's culture, their diversity. They're probably doing something right. That's what's making Canada, in my opinion, more adaptable to this new frontier of the next 50 years,
So do you think that like Canada is I'm not gonna say the gold standard, but like, do you think it is up there with other countries of equal openness to be set as the example for the rest of the world? Like, I mean, look, the reality is with the evolution of technology and the internet and integration of information that's being exchanged at all levels nowadays, like kids are getting information fed them at the age of 3 through technologies. Do you think that, I personally think it's inevitable that the whole world is going to become one giant culture at some point. Absolutely. And we've talked about this before, and we'll kind of come back to that in a second in terms of what that looks like and is it possible. But with that being the case, because there's this like inevitability to have sort of a meshing of cultures, whether it's through your workplace, whether it's through your social life, your video gaming online, whatever it is, you're going to be playing games and working with people from all across the world. More and more so every single day.
Yes.
So do you think that the world should adapt the philosophy of Canadians or other egalitarian-ish countries?
Yeah, like Scandinavian countries and stuff like that. I don't know. And that's the real answer, right? We only understand the last 20 years because we're here now and we're able to see it backwards. Like the future is so like uncertain, and it's causing us all this kind of natural residual anxiety because once again I'm mentioning the same things, like AI will displace your job, and I can say that blanket statement to everyone who's listening. It will displace your job. What are you going to do sooner or later? You know what I mean? Like we've already got trucks, the trucking industry, right? Like that's being disrupted. 7% of jobs in, I think it's 7 or 5%, don't quote me, but let's just say a percentage, a big percentage. What are those like people are going to do? You know what I mean? Like where are they going to come for? You know what I mean? There's increased competition now. So it's like we have to be open to just changing the entire like rule system to some degree, not burn it down. And that's what, when I initially said it, I was like obviously angry because it's just, but I'm saying not burn it down, but we have to be able to embody some of these characteristics of change.
Yeah. Well, so let's just put it this way. I think that we have to be very open and susceptible to change. That's it. A much more better, like a better way of putting that statement.
Right.
Now, I'm going to rephrase my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of asking whether or not Canadian lifestyle is the gold standard for some global uniting of cultures, but perhaps, do you think that a Canadian will have an advantage competing in a global market over, let's say, an American or a person from another country where they're not as open as Canadians are?
Well, these are like a little bit more technical questions, and but I think the answer is like probably not in some ways, because like the world is going towards technology. Are we embracing technology at like a good rate? Like that's one thing that like I don't think we're doing very well.
But the part of technology is something that is learnable. I mean, okay, so is our, I guess you could say technically, so is being open. That's also something that you can learn. It's a skill that you can acquire over time.
Right.
But I would think that learning a technology is something that you can learn a lot faster. You can pick that skill up faster than you can change your personality type.
Yeah, and like still like the pipeline. I know in Montreal at least that there's a lot of big kind of tech companies coming up there. Like and we are trying to pivot towards that. But are we pivoting as fast as China and like Silicon Valley? The answer is like no.
Okay, sure, that's fair, right. but not. I mean,
but the attitude. I think the attitude is like is something that can be replicated, and with our. With our country, I think that there is a lot of, I think in my personal opinion, like Canada pumps out a lot of artists, if you can't drive trucks and stuff like that, maybe what does the egalitarian world look like? What does value look like? Well, value looks like a podcast like this, what I mean? And it looks like creating art, and that's the value, because, maybe we don't have to drive the trucks, and, this is where my urge towards listeners and everyone is like, because I don't know, I'm not trying to say I'm like a guru, but I did pick some good people like ourselves are able to kind of forecast and simulate the future only because we spend so much time thinking about where things are going, right? So one of these things is like, maybe you don't have to do the dishes, you don't have to do that, you don't have to do these basic tasks, but one option is like creating art, because art has value. It's a store of value, and this is what it looks like, helping each other kind of cope with these kind of mental issues until we get to the point where Neuralink kind of deals with them on our own, and now we have a new problem. That's why I say I don't know what it looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know what the future looks like, because our biology is actually going to change. If you want to continue playing the game, we're going to have to adapt and kind of create value.
I'm not saying that from a position of like, oh, if you're geographically from Canada, you're going to have an advantage.
Yeah, of course.
What I'm saying is, when those changes are happening, right? When we start, when Neuralink advances and all this, and our biology starts to adapt, etc., I think one of the traits of humankind that has to continue to move forward is going to be the personality types that are open and compassionate.
Yes.
Like we need this. For humans to survive, we're gonna forever need to be compassionate and cooperative.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. Even if we get into some world where it's like Skynet,
Right.
Even more so then, because we're really going to need to rely on each other, right, to use our collective intelligence to combat against different challenges that come up in the future.
Yeah.
And you always need cooperation. Like, there's no single human that's ever going to be, at least I don't think anytime in the very near future, definitely before we go extinct, will we find some special human that's born that just is smarter than the whole world together.
Yes.
It's never going to happen. We're always going to need each other.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm getting at. And I think that the culture of Canada is to accept that we need our neighbors, we love our neighbors, we care for our neighbors, we want to help our neighbors.
We could do it more, but I think like the theory is like trying to be put in place. Like, that's what I mean. The theory is like the implementation, we're attempting that.
Yes.
Through policy and stuff like that, and avoiding saying certain things and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is what it looks like. This is the clash, right? This is the attempt that we're trying to do. Like, is it wrong? Like, is it right to like silence people based on what they say? Like, I don't know, but we're trying it, right? You know what I mean? So like, that's what it looks like. But on a societal scale that works, but on an individual scale, it does have an impact on us, because we had conversations with white males in on Omegle, right, down in the South, and like they feel like they're the marginalized community because they can't say stuff, right? And I'm taking it from my proclivity and my specialty, and that the person I am is always to do with the individual. We have to talk about the societal things, because this advice of being open and all that stuff, it doesn't work in North Korea. Like, you know what I mean? But it works here. So like, that's why I have a tendency to try to understand what that game looks like.
I would normally debate you on that. For the sake of time, I won't.
Yeah.
I do think it would be useful in North Korea.
Yeah.
I understand.
I think it will be useful, but I think the degree... Anyways, let's...
Yeah, without going too far into that, because what I want to sort of jump over to, and I don't mean to make this a hard break between conversation pieces here, but it is still somewhat related on topic here. I am really curious to dig a little bit deeper into this idea of the meshing of different cultures under one roof. Obviously that being like a the proverbial roof here, like as in being all of us living in Toronto. What happens? Like, what is happening today? What is the intention of multiculturalism, and what actually is happening today? These are the two little discussion points I want to explore as well, because it really is important as a Canadian when we get tagged as being, the most multicultural or most open to multiculturalism in the world.
Right.
I really am curious to talk about that, because, I definitely think we have less issues with racism and items like this as xenophobia. There's less of it in Canada, in my opinion, compared to the States. Not that it doesn't exist; it obviously still does. But I am curious to know, like, when you have another culture coming into Canada, I think there's you said it before. You said it yourself. There's a violence to the assimilation.
There's
process.
like a reaction.
Yeah, because now it's a little bit of like whose culture gets cut, like what part of whose culture gets cut, and what makes the cut.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what parts of your Indian culture, Roy, are gonna be suitable for the general population of Canada, and therefore will continue and prosper, and what parts of your Indian culture are going to get weeded out because it doesn't fit with the rest of the mass of people, right? And like the reality is, look, there has to be some cuts made at some point. Different cultures are going to have to forfeit different traditions.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it just has to be that way. There's a capacity that we can handle in terms of the amount of culture to move forward. Otherwise, we'd have fucking holidays every other day because, you know, if you incorporated all the Chinese cultural holidays, the Jewish ones, the Italian ones, we would have an endless number of holidays, right? So at some point, we have to say, okay, look, we're living in Canada and we respect everybody's culture, but at the same time, we do have to put down some rules and regulation to say, look, these are the limits to which we must maintain our lifestyle.
Yes.
Right? And one of those things, you know, to date anyways, it really has been the statutory holidays across Canada. And I know there's a lot of contest over this from cultures that are not Christian or Jewish, because most of the holidays in Canada, and for that matter, all of North America, are rooted in Christian and Jewish tradition.
Right.
Right? Like Christmas, as an example. You know, there's a huge thing in Canada about not being allowed to say Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a forbidden fruit now. You're really not supposed to say that.
Right.
You're supposed to say Happy Holidays.
Yeah.
Right? So that you're incorporating all of the different cultures that live in this country and in the city.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I start to have a bone to pick, because at the end of the day, okay, I can appreciate that, you know, you want to be part of this as well, because if we're going to force you to be part of this holiday that's rooted in Christian culture, I understand that you also don't want to feel like you're ostracized from it. But at the same time, I grew up and spent my entire life calling it Christmas, and I'm happy that it's Christmas. Right? I mean, I don't see what's wrong with other cultures accepting Merry Christmas as an example. Right? And this is where the lines get really blurry, and this is where the violence comes from. Right? Because if you're an alternate culture and you're like, well, no, I don't want to say Merry Christmas. I don't believe in Christmas. I don't even believe in Christ. I don't even think he exists. Right? My religion does not say that. So because of that, and because of the freedom of religion in North America, and also like specifically in Canada, there's like you have a right to say, no, I don't want to say Merry Christmas, and I don't think that anybody else should either, because it can be offensive to me. And this is where we have to really be careful, because this is the part that gets a little bit blurry and a little bit riskier. You know, so what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you are a Christian as well. So perhaps the Merry Christmas one's a bad example because you celebrate Christmas. But you know, for lack of thinking of another topic or another thing to contest here, what's your opinion on this idea that we're no longer allowed to say Merry Christmas in Canada?
Yeah, like it definitely being a Christian, like I'm definitely more spiritual. I feel like I can say that than you a little bit, you know what I mean? But we both understand the Bible probably just equally enough, and you know, I feel it's a shame that we are giving, you know, we are throwing away more religion and more spirituality. Like I have to go on a tangent here. You know, we're all in a bunch of different groups and group identities, and we're clashing together, and we're trying to figure out how to make it work. And you know, it continues to polarize us a lot more, right? You know what I mean? In terms of like, okay, like fuck Christmas, right? Like just throw that out. But like, you know, now we are humans and we are believers. We believe in something. So what tends to happen when you drop a religion is that you start to believe in the way you live and whatever the internet's telling you, right? So that's your way of life, and it causes more like problems on an individual level, because it's just like, for example, like before, like if me and you got in an argument, we'd be like, oh man, fuck it, but I still believe in God, and you know, like I'm gonna just, you know, that's the main thing here, right? But now it's just like there's no believing in anything else. It's just believing in the way you live your life, and that is kind of dictated by like consumption and all those things. But okay, at the end of the day, it's just we kind of have to kind of axe some of these things, right? We're gonna feel bad about it, right? And in the future, people are just they're not gonna be us, right? We're not gonna live through that time period.
And that's fine. And I think if there's a natural selection process, I guess, that happens with this, you know, omitting of religious holidays for the sake of secularism growing and religion dying. I understand that, because, you know, I can see why that change would occur. Although, you know, is that the same thing as somebody moving into the country and saying, hey, I don't want to celebrate your holiday? Is that the same thing? Like,
I think there's a lot of debate, and there's a lot of like, you know, even like the hijabs in Montreal are, I know, like there it's a long and arduous process to kind of like govern this thing, right? So it's like it does take time and a lot of rationale and competing ideas and votes and all that stuff. So I mean, like, do I trust in the system? Yeah, to some degree. So like I'm gonna just say whatever the system kind of outputs, I'm gonna go along with it for the most part. You know, because I'm affected by this. My culture is. We celebrate Christmas. We go to church. We have 2 days off, right? You know, but at the end of the day, it's just like, well, how do the other cultures have to deal with this? You know,
but hold on. See, this is why I want to make an interjection, because I don't want to be misunderstood here. I'm not, because I understand the position of those who don't celebrate Christmas.
Right.
I understand why you would want one of two things to happen.
Yeah.
Either also celebrate my holiday.
Yeah.
So I have a moment of celebration in this country.
Yeah.
Or remove the celebration for everybody so that nobody has it.
Yeah.
Right? And I understand that. I'm not disagreeing with the mentality behind it. Because my claim for why we should not stop saying Merry Christmas has nothing to do with my Christian background.
Right.
I am not religious.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for the most part. I'm more spiritual than I ever have been, but I'm not religious.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a strong Catholic.
Right.
That's for sure. So I'm definitely not fighting this on behalf of Catholics or Christians.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that as a Canadian,
right,
I respect the tradition of on the 25th of December, I celebrate Christmas as a Canadian.
Right.
And I'm not celebrating Christmas because it represents Christ's birth, although that is the reason why the origin of Christmas came about.
Right.
I'm not celebrating it in 2021 because Christ was born in the year 0, right?
Yes.
Like, that's not the reason why I celebrate Christmas. Now, I can see why a Christian would believe that that's why they're celebrating Christmas.
Right.
And yes, that is the source of the holiday. But at the end of the day, from a person who is a Christian, who I'm not, and I'm telling you as a modern day Christian, you know, that's not very religious, I'm not celebrating Christmas because of Christ's birth.
Yeah.
I'm celebrating Christmas because of the tradition of being a Canadian on the 25th of December. I'm going to say Merry Christmas to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I have the bone to pick, is that, see, it's not that I'm trying to say, hey, your religion's not important enough to have its day too. I'm not even saying that. Like, I'm not saying that because I'm also not saying that the Christians, hey, you should have this holiday for you guys as a Christian. That's not what I'm not supporting Christmas as a Christian.
Right.
I'm supporting Christmas as a Canadian who
Right.
grew up as a kid. Every day of the year, when Christmas got closer and closer and closer, you got more and more excited. You know, and unfortunately, it's based on consumerism.
Yeah.
It's another whole topic altogether.
Yeah,
Waking
yeah.
up, get presents, you know.
Yeah.
But it also was about family time.
Yes.
And, like, just because I'm not Christian doesn't mean I can't celebrate spending time with my family on the 25th of December.
Right.
Fuck, if you want to change the name of it from Christmas to something else, I guess you can do that. But it's not, because that's where the ties are to Christ's birth, Christmas, right? Obviously.
Right.
But all I'm saying is that Christmas should be respected as a day that Canadians celebrate.
And listen, so I think, and my honest opinion is this like, Christmas is like a day, right? Like any other day, right? And there's, you know, definitely that energy. It's just like no one's saying that, you know, you wouldn't be able to celebrate that, right? So, I am looking obviously towards, for example, I have a lot of Sri Lankan friends, specifically Tamils, and, you know, I've gotten stories from every single one from a certain place called Jaffna, right? And in Jaffna, they don't have, like, religion is and is not used as like a means of manipulation and, you know, oh, fuck these Muslims, fuck these Christians, you know, fuck all these people, you know, and it's not used as a political thing. Actually, all of them have told me when Christmas comes around, we all go and celebrate Christmas, if you're a Muslim or whatever.
See,
you know?
that's because you should use it as a uniting tool,
exactly,
not a dividing tool,
right? And that's why it's like, okay, you know, like we're trying to hold on to these things, and I know you're not of that. You're arguing that point, Rob. Like, I understand that 100%. I know that you see a world where it's just like, oh man, it's like Eid. I want to take part in Eid. Like, you know what I mean? Let's do it. Like, you know what I mean? Let's do it. Why does it have to be dividing? Why doesn't it be like, let's come over, let's feast all together? You know what I mean? That obviously now there's certain constraints. Like you have to be a Muslim. No, I don't think that's true. I honestly don't think that's true because
I can't speak on behalf of the Muslims.
I can't, but I can speak on behalf of like Muslims in Sri Lanka that are Tamils. Like we're feasting tonight, guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and that's and I find okay. Look, I do
Yeah.
think that as the generations go forward in Canada,
right.
like I'm second generation, I guess,
And I'm first.
You're first
Yeah.
generation. And I think as I get to third and fourth, like my son and his son
Yeah.
/ daughter, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, one day, you know, it'll come farther and they'll become more Canadian than you and I are.
Yeah.
Because we're still well networked and tied to our descent.
And I think
Right?
if we do it right in some of these countries, like, okay, look at the West Indies. Same exact story. It's Christmas, Muslims, Buddhists, all hang out.
Everybody celebrates it.
Everybody celebrates
Would
Christmas.
you erase Canada Day? You know what I mean? Like, would you take Canada Day away from Canadians because it doesn't celebrate? Let's say I'm from Italy and I
Yeah.
come here and I say, "Oh, I want to celebrate Canada. I want to celebrate Italy Day."
Right.
Because I'm fucking Italian by nature and I'm in your country now, but I still want to carry forward the idea of my Italian culture. Nothing about that would sound right. You can say it to any Canadian, and no
Yeah.
Canadian, I think, anyways,
Yeah.
would be like, "Oh no, let's stop celebrating Canada Day." No, because we all want to celebrate Canada Day together because it's a Canadian tradition.
Oh, 100%. We all fucking, we light up, man, and we,
Yeah, it's
crack
just
open the
another
beers
reason
and-
to come together.
Oh man, exactly. And that's essentially I feel what religion, like, once again going back to that Viktor Frankl, and him outside and looking at the sky, and that dude is just like, imagine what it could be. Well, this is what I think it could be. And just to kind of once again bring home the point, I'm going on an extreme tangent back to like the core of Risky Thoughts. It's like strengthen the individual. We fix the individual. We fix this bullshit where we're fucking, fighting with each other. And once again, in his whole podcast today, we argue that is a natural process, But at some point, well, let's look at the goal. Let's look at the prize.
Yeah.
Where we're all like celebrating Eid together. We're all celebrating Christmas together. We're all celebrating. I forgot, because I go to a Buddhist temple. I forgot. It's in May. It's Buddha's birthday. When he was born. And so let's do that shit.
And look, let me just to reinforce that point. I on my last little rant here, it's not that everybody that comes to this country who's not Christians, like, it's not that every Muslim, for example, that comes to this country wants to get rid of Christmas.
Yeah.
There are select individuals who push the narrative forward that, hey, we need to get rid of this.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to take a dig at those people either, but I think there is some insecurities
Yeah.
that are being managed there, right? And that's again about fixing the individual.
Yeah.
Because a truly confident person who comes to a different country, like, and I'm not saying that I'm perfectly confident, but if I moved into a different country, let's say I moved to a Muslim country, and they were celebrating all the Muslim holidays, I would never move forward and be like, "Oh, I want you guys to stop celebrating your Muslim holidays. I want you to celebrate my holidays," because I feel insecure about the fact that I'm not included in that group. This idea of not being part of the collective, if the individual is whole,
Yeah.
there's no concerns about these types of things,
Right.
Because there's not an insecurity there, right?
I think it's like and I'm gonna put it like a blanket kind of statement. I think these people who are trying to change things and trying to get more notary towards their cause and stuff like that, and at the end of the day, like, power, they're looking for power, and you're right, it is insecure. If you're looking for power, like, then you're insecure.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you're fully fucking insecure,
And I'm
you're
not,
a narcissist. Of some you have narcissistic tendencies, but yeah, go ahead.
100%. I'm not suggesting that anyone that wants to make change is insecure.
No,
either,
no,
right?
no. But like I said, if your intention is for power,
Right.
power corrupts, right? So it's like if you're looking for change, and that's where you can't make that blanket statement. I do take that back. It's just like you really have to do it by case basis on the individual and the group, what they're trying to do, and be very vigilant to see why are you guys changing this? What do you guys really want to do here? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So is it for power? If it's for power, then we got governments already, guys. Right, like that's just the way all societies work on the planet. Whether you go from China to Russia to fucking Canada, to Scandinavian countries, America, it's okay. Let them just deal with that, but don't like the cultural stuff. Like if you're looking for power there to get your shit in the door and in a policy, then I don't know.
Well, and so I want to sort of conclude this whole thing by saying, like, look, once again, the whole reason why I'm proud to be Canadian for the most part is our ability to be open to other cultures and to other things in general, to each other. to be loving to all people. Like, that is the most important part of being Canadian that makes me proud to be Canadian. So, I hope that nobody that listened to this has a particular opinion of myself or Roy to think that we have any judgment towards any other cultures. Not at all.
No.
Like, not even in the remotest.
We're just highlighting the fact that, we observe that Canadians are open.
That's right.
In on a political sense, right?
Yes,
So,
and also to further what I've sort of been ranting about again for the last little while here is that the whole crux behind why I believe that Christmas should stay Christmas is strictly because there needs to be some common ground, some common threads that every Canadian can look to and hold as something that is truly Canadian. Right, and if we start dissolving all these things that are traditionally Canadian, then we start to lose what Canada was or even is, and it may not ever exist, because at some point, if we were to remove all of the things that were iconically Canadian, then we're not really Canadian anymore. You know what I mean? We're just a mass of people living in the same space geographically. Yeah. And that's not where I want to see Canada go. I want to see Canadians be proud every morning to be Canadians. Right? When they wake up, it's I'm very happy to be Canadian. On a global scale, you should be proud to be Canadian.
100%.
One of the best places in the world to live.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, I also want to apologize for everyone listening that there may have been some interference with the noise tonight. Unfortunately, we had something kind of make a noise in the background here. I hope it didn't distort the sound quality too badly. But I guess we'll find out before we upload it. And anyways, I just wanted to see those little few things there. That's all.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to be like too debatey, you know what I mean? But I have to put my kind of point too, right? And I'll let you kind of rebuttal that too. Like I think there's gonna be a redefining of what it is to be Canadian. I think it's already happening, right? And I don't want to lose certain things, too, as we're going forward, but it's going to be a complete, why it's so difficult for people in our generation and millennials is because like the world is changing rapidly. Like, first of all, we can't even intake all this information in the first place. This technology is like, it's we're surrounded by a bunch of miracles. I want to eat something, Uber Eats, someone comes to my door, gives me something. The world is changed. It's not as slow as it was, right? And it's a complicated situation, and is moving too fast dangerous? I don't know. I think we kind of have to, and that's the whole doomer mentality, right? Like this is complicated, but I'm embracing it every step of the way. Whatever changes. The core tenets of when you wake up and you read your lines, we must tend to our own garden. These hold true. You know what I mean? The political stuff is going to happen whether we like or not, and we should also do our part to be a part of that change rather than just kind of non-partisan, if that's the word, to just kind of sit in the sidelines. It's like we do have somewhat of a responsibility and duty for the next generation coming in, right? So things are going to change, and I'm embracing that change.
Absolutely.
Right? Good or bad.
Absolutely.
Literally.
So in closing, my final remarks are basically to thank all of you for listening. We really appreciate the support, and this was intended to be a tribute to the Canadian listeners specifically. Yeah. We've had the most feedback from Canadian listeners. Continue to send us your messages on riskythoughts.to, which is our Instagram page. And I think our Twitter is @riskythought without the S. And, we did upload some of our content to YouTube. A little bit dicier there. We can start seeing some comments coming through that, but it's not really a popular podcasting platform, so we're not expecting too much there. But again, check it out if you have the time, and like and comment and subscribe. And that's it for me, Roy. So I don't know if you got anything else you wanted to add.
No, that's it. That's another episode of Risky Thoughts. We hope you enjoy your week.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.